Welcome back to the Multifamily Mind podcast. In today's conversation, we chat with Senior Account Executive at LuxeGiving and Community Event Expert, Jese Gary. We walk through the whole process and the psychology of event planning. From how you can proactively plan to budgeting for success, you'll learn everything you need to know about executing events that create a lasting community culture. Let's get this party started, shall we? Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Multifamily Mind. I am your host, Steve Wunsch, and I am very pleased to be joined today by Jese Gary. How you doing, Jesse?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on as a guest today, Steve.
You bet. And we have to give a shout out to Gina McIntosh at Grace Hill, who was the person that actually connected us. So again, their audience is a testimony to the power of social network and really helping to bring some new conversations to our podcast. And I'm really excited, Jesse, because I've been in multifamily now for 31 years, both sides of the table. I've never encountered someone who does what you do, and I think it's really unique. I think you've got a niche in this marketplace for sure, and I'm really excited for our guests to hear what you do. So can you kind of tell us a little bit about what services you provide, and then we'll talk a little bit more.
Yeah, it's funny because even still to this day, I'll meet people that might even be in an area that I've been in for some time. And they're like, I didn't even know that this type of business existed. So a little bit about me. My company is called LuxeGiving, and we specialize in resident event support for multifamily apartments. So instead of having to call around to a bunch of caterers and vendors to try to find the resources you need for your specific event, we have a list of suppliers that help us of executing the events based off of what we know is a need inside of apartments. And it's an adjusted type of event because, a happy hour for your friends and family is going to be a little bit different than a happy hour that you're going to be doing inside of multifamily. So we really do specialize in creating great experiences for residential locations.
Yeah, the word comes to my mind when it's almost like bespoke resident events kind of a thing. And you're based in Houston, right?
I'm actually I stay in Dallas, but most of the clients that we are supporting currently are from Virginia up. So we have communities we work with in Philadelphia, DC, Baltimore, Jersey. But we can help with people all over the U.S.
Great. I just want to make sure everybody knows that you do provide this service anywhere in the country that might need it, which is very cool. So let's dig into a little bit around your process, because I kind of found this fascinating. Everybody knows the typical resident events. There's tacos and trivia, and then there's, Valentine hearts and cupcakes for Valentine's Day. But you really kind of provide a unique you make some unique recommendations, and you do kind of a deep dive in terms of almost like a psychological profile of the residents that live at a community. Can you share a little bit about that process?
Yeah, and it's been an evolution because when I first started doing events, you're like, oh, Super Bowl, everyone does Super Bowl the same. No, they do not. They literally do not. And I had to learn, okay, if this community is based inside of a city or if it's in the suburbs, are there more families? Are there more children? There is a lot that's inside of hosting events. So often when I talk to a community, I tell them to be as honest as possible about what are the demographics and makeups of the residents that are there, because it helps us with understanding, if you have a lot of families, what I would recommend to you is going to be a lot different than maybe inside of a metropolitan city where everyone is 24 to 35. They're in different life areas and different interests. So with us, what we often try to do is find out exactly what is even the style of community, because a garden style compared to a high rise, it's totally different. How do you even market it? Because if you're a garden style and you're hoping that just putting flyers out, depending on how well engaged your community is, they're not going to know. And often what happens when people are planning events, they're thinking through a lens of people actually are looking for your information. And sometimes they really aren't. So what will happen, they'll think like, oh, we're really trying to engage our residents and we're going to throw all this money at this one event. If they have been habitually ignoring anything you've been doing prior to then, they're going to ignore this $3,000 event that you just put together because you haven't started to build the momentum and figuring out how they're even going to find out about this or even what they really like. I think that it's important to know, like, what are the interests of the people that live there, and thinking through, if I am going to be doing a pool party, what would be a good version of a pool party? Because there's going to be a difference between all of the different types of, and the days too. I mean, because
for sure.
All of that stuff is really relative.
That's a good thing to think about. And too, like the type of a garden style typically has a nice big clubhouse that accommodates a larger number of people, whereas a high rise or mid rise may not have a common space that's that big, or maybe they do, it's on the rooftop, who knows. But interesting to kind of get that psychology of an event down and really create something that speaks to the folks that live there. You made a good point about, if they've ignored you up until this point, they're going to still ignore you. What are some of the things you'll do with a community manager pre-event as you are really trying to re-engage that resident demographic? Are you doing anything special, anything different or unique in terms of outreach so that people know, hey, this isn't your typical, it's not your typical apartment event. Come and see what's different.
And with that, one of the things I want to even start off with is that I understand that most of you have loads of work to do. So any feedback or commentary I give is not even on deaf ears, because even to have a phone call with someone in the office, I'm being put on hold 2-3 times because someone is walking in or something is happening. So honestly, I do feel like most people are just trying to do their best with all of the things that are required of them with their workload, as well as residents. And even when I'm talking to residents, when I used to physically go to events that may have an issue with management, I'm like, just look statistically. For every 100 of y'all, it's really like one in the office. Or every, so I'm like, they're already outnumbered. And it's not because they don't care. It's not because of all of these personal attacks that we're feeling. It's really just because people are trying to do the best within their position and their role. So when it does come to thinking about events and you're trying to engage people, I often talk to like my team, like my clients. And granted, some people, they only see me as a vendor. People that have been working with me for a long time, they have more of a relationship with me, and it's not so standoffish. Like, I have some people that have been working with me for 10 plus years, and all they do is message me, Jesse, I have to figure out what I have to do in May. What can I do? Help me. Where I have some people that would just say, hey, I just need a bartender. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what you need it for. And some people just don't have the time to even tell me, and they don't have the rapport with me to allow for me to help and support them. And then typically what happens is after the event, they're like, oh, I didn't know you had this available. I'm like, well, that's why we're here. Don't just look at us as someone that's providing you with one thing. We have an ability to help you with like really rounding out your event. So one of the things I do recommend to people when it's trying to re-engage someone is to think to yourself, like, stop planning things last minute. That's something that I will hard say stop. Because I'm like, if you're waiting,
nobody got time for that.
No, it's like it's automatically guaranteed unless you have, I would say that like that 25 to 35 community, like their schedule is free flowing sometimes. And again, that depends on where you're located and the professions of them. Like if you send me a notice today, like I live in a nice building myself. If you send me a notice today for something tomorrow, I'm so sorry. I'm not going to come to it. Like I already have my day planned out. I already have my week planned out. So I think it's something that's valuable in taking the time to really, one, plan in advance. And then what happens is that if I am coming to the event tomorrow, I can then tell you, hey, just so you know, we've been hearing feedback about doing this. We do have this booked for this day. So it's
Right.
important to go from one event to the next event so that people have it on their radar, and then you can do teasers into it. And I think that that is something for some of the communities I work with. And the thing is that I know that in the pandemic, a lot of us went from being proactive with planning and very reactive. Like I
Yeah.
would literally sit with people and plan out their whole quarter. And for some reason, post pandemic it's been a little bit of a struggle for people to get back into that. Let me be ahead of what I need to do each event, and has gone
Sure.
into this planning things out 2 to 3 weeks in advance. And doing that, it's robbing you of the opportunity to really actively promote it, and then allowing yourself to really get your residents excited about it. But telling someone a couple of days before, depending on the age demographic and careers, they're just not going to, and eventually they just stop looking and caring,
Right.
because that expectation is just not there.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, being proactive is a habit that is very difficult for multifamily people to break. It's been our nature for, I mean, it's been our nature for years. We look in the rearview mirror when the pricing isn't right, and instead of looking through the windshield and being like, we're headed this way, what should we do? you know? Yeah.
But even with you saying that, I think that that's why even with some of the budgeting conversations, like I think that so many people that even work with us, having a conversation before they even go into these budget conversations, it can be helpful, because you coming back now in the spring with a price, I could have told you last summer that is not realistic. So I think that we have to be present to all of that to make our lives a lot easier.
And that's a really great point to make. I mean, it's spring. Probably when this hits the airwaves, it will be summer. So it'll be busy leasing season. So they'll already be, treading water, so to speak, with how busy they'll be, but also being prepared for, hey, this is the plan that we want for our, once a quarter resident event for next year, before you get into those budget conversations in August, September, and October, so that you do have time to plan, adjust, make sure that you've, got all your ducks in a row, so that you're not hit by surprises next year. That's a great recommendation to make. And, one of the things I wanted to mention, Jesse, is I recently spoke with Kara Rice from Swift Bunny, and we were talking about, a sense of community and what that really means to today's renters. And some of the old school things still have a place, but, it's important to realize, and we reached out to a few different data collectors, one being Satisfax, to find out, what are some of the drivers that create this sense of community, because sense of community is a really high impact into a resident's overall perception of value, right? So how much I'm paying for rent and what I'm getting in return. And community-sponsored social activities and events are the number 1 out of 5 driver for a sense of community. And it's talking about high-quality, engaging, well-organized events that strongly help people correlate with that community feeling. And then, we mentioned, while it's not just events that are going to create this stronger community, but well-received events often align with greater resident connection. And it's, it's about connecting residents with one another, which is kind of the old school mentality behind a resident event. But it's also creating that connection with the leasing team and really making sure that the residents understand, we're here to elevate your living experience. We're here to keep tabs on your service and your satisfaction, because there's nothing that impacts the bottom line bigger or faster than a resident renewing their lease and staying with you, for a year or 2 more. And I think all of these well-executed events really kind of play to that strategy.
Yeah. And I think it also is because of the age demographic that's now moving into these buildings. Like a sense of belonging is at their core. And if you aren't tagging into that, I feel like I think I'm 44, so I'm like a Gen Z or whatever. Like, I don't know all the different breakdowns, but I know the generation is underneath me. Everything about them is belonging.
Yeah. Whether it's a running club or a book club or, I completely hear you. You're 100% right.
So it's like we know that this is a part in marketing in their real lives. Why would it not impact where they live? Of course,
Right.
like it's 100% correlated. And the thing is well thought out ones, and well thought out does not mean that it's expensive. And again, expensive is relative, because how much something is going to cost to be executed in Boston, because I think this is something that's even great to talk about. You have to know how much things cost where you're located.
Right.
Like, for me to do a cooking class in DC compared to Texas, compared to Austin, those are three different price points. So
Sure.
if
Yeah.
you're setting a budget for specific events and not taking into consideration the area that it might be, it's going to disconnect. And what happens, I find that when it doesn't match, the properties don't always do them because of the stress that's involved with it, because they're just like, maybe if we just don't do events for 3 months, then we can put stuff together and still try to make it happen. So I think when it comes to creating a sense of community, there can be this pressure to do a whole bunch at the same time. But if they're not well executed, people still won't come. And the thing about it is, by creating a thought through event, you can really create a culture inside of your building.
100%.
Whenever I'm talking to people, they're like, "Oh, it's food and drinks." I host events and I don't drink. So if you are doing something drinking wise all the time, I'm not coming.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to. And if you're always doing parties, guess what? I probably am not coming to that either.
Yeah.
So if you're always doing those things, you're actually creating something where people that would be valuable inside the community, they're not even plugging into it.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, and interestingly enough, though, one thing that we found when we were doing our research is even some of those residents that don't come, if you're well prepared, if it's well executed, and if it's well broadcast on your social channels, so Instagram, Facebook, whatever other social channels the property might be using, the residents who don't come actually see value in that, because then they can say, that's where I live. So even if I don't participate when an event is kicked off well, it's planned well, organized well, you might have a really good turnout in person, but there's a lot of people who didn't come, but they still think that it's valuable, because it's that recognition that happens when somebody says, "Hey, don't you live there?" Yeah, that's my community. That's kind of stuff they do there.
And it also creates a sense of FOMO.
Yeah, it does.
and so people are like, dang, I need to start paying attention. But that's why even I tell people, you have to diversify what you're doing. If you're always just doing the pool party, or if you're always doing Wine Down Wednesday, you might get the new people, or just the individuals that have made relationships. But the people that are just like, I'll just have wine myself. And this all depends on the class of building and the rent and the demographic. I always tell people that I rarely have individuals that are just like those tough tenants that come. Most people that are coming to the events that we've actually ever hosted is because they want to get to know someone. And that might also be because we're in metropolitan cities. So you have a lot of transplants, and people want to make friends. They do want to have these circles of individuals. So that's why I do say, do your party when you want to do your party, but also do some interactive experiences, because everyone is not going to thrive in so-and-so doing a whole bunch of beer backflips into the pool. They're going to let me get my food.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go
take
home.
it back to my apartment. Yeah.
and I'm like, you're creating spaces where you're just feeding people. And that is important for you to know, what is the gauge of success for your event? Because everyone would take free food. Someone can live out free donuts, but deep down I can be like, dang, Dunkin' Donuts, you can even get the good ones. Because people take it out the box if you're going to do Dunkin', because everybody can't afford to do, gourmet donuts. But if I'm paying X amount of money and I see Dunkin' Donuts and I know that just costs you $20, it doesn't connect.
No, it doesn't. It's kind of bait and switch.
Because they residents associate their rent to the event.
Yes.
And we know that is not the case, but for them, when it's done cheaply and is done poorly, and when corners are cut, they're thinking to themselves, especially if you're in metropolitan city, I paid $2,000, I paid $3,000, and you just put the box of Dunkin' Donuts out.
Yeah. I hear you. I do. I hear it's that perception of value,
Yeah.
and we, well thought out, well planned is the strategy for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So can you maybe share with our listeners, you've been in this space for a while. What in your experience have been some of the most successful events that you've seen or helped execute with some of the companies that you're partnering with?
Some of the ones that have been the most successful, a lot of it comes down to budget, to be honest.
Yeah.
And the thing is that when a community doesn't necessarily have the budget, it requires a lot more scrappiness, and that often falls on concierge, and it depends on the community
Yeah. Yeah.
like if they're going to have to build all this stuff out, it's not going to be fun for them to do. And then they're just going to cut corners because they're trying to handle client, resident requests while still doing that. So that can not be the best of options for someone. But the ones I feel that are the best executed are always going to be the ones that take in consideration a different interest inside of a community. Like, it's not always going to have to be the fancy stuff. It's the little things that really even matter to someone. Like we do work with not only multifamily, we work with active senior facilities as well.
Yeah.
And it happened to be that we just did a paint and sip. And the paint and sip is not new. And often I don't even really care for them. I rather do paint and sips with usable products, because most people go to paint and sips and they're excited in the moment and they just trash it. So I'm like, for something as expensive as it is, I'd rather us do a tote bag or something that they can use, not something that's going to go into the closet or trash. But what happened was, because they had someone, because it's active senior facility, someone had passed away a week ago. But they had this event, and then the instructor had live music, and they were just playing and having a good time. So that uplifted their spirits. Like, I think it's important to think about it from a holistic approach, because it's understanding, like, it's not always going to be that big thing. It's about the little ways of executing it. So even if you do have to, like I mentioned about the Dunkin' Donuts, it's not about you going to Dunkin' Donuts. It's about how you present it. It's about how things are done. And I think that is key to understand. Like, even if you're hiring a vendor to do X, they're not decorating the whole room. And then it can, but understand there's a cost that's associated to every hour someone has to be there. They got to get paid. Like, when you're hiring vendors, they're not doing it for free. And every hour they're somewhere, they have to be compensated accordingly. So if you are going to get stuff from Chipotle, just how you're presenting things, I think that adds an extra value. So even if you're going to Chipotle, you're getting all of the sternos and you're laying things out. How are you presenting it? Are we just throwing? Because I see it on Instagram all the time. I'm just like, why would you just put that out there like that? Like, a well-executed event is thinking to yourself, like, if I walked into this space, will it just be, I'm grateful for being here? Oh, because you just gave me dinner? Or is this like, I can tell that they care? Because ultimately, that's what makes a big difference. Because even though I don't ever go to any of the events where I stay, I know if something's wrong, I can go to them because I do believe that they genuinely care.
Yes, that's a key. That's a key element. And I think that that's something that we oftentimes forget, because we just get into, we get into our routine. We've got our blinders on. This is something we have to do. It's our policy to do one a month or one a quarter or whatever that looks like. Yeah. And really, you got to flip the script and really look at it as an opportunity to continue to deliver on your promises, to continue to, promote the type of lifestyle that you want people to know they can live if they choose you. So, that's a really great reminder. Hi, folks. I wanted to take a quick 30-second break so that I could say, I hope you're enjoying today's episode, which couldn't be brought to you without being superpowered by Sales Mail. I mean, really, we couldn't produce this content without them. Sales Mail is the easiest and best tool for sending personalized video via email, text, and CRM. So, if you really are enjoying today's episode, it would mean a lot to me if you would visit salesmail.com so you can check out how our solutions might impact your business communications. And don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn as well. Okay, that's enough. Now back to the conversation. In your experience, Jesse, do you feel like resident events do play into a successful renewal strategy? Do you think have you any experience in there or any data you could share with us?
Yeah. Well, not necessarily data. It's just even just having conversations with people. Like when you can tell that people are like making friendships, like one of the things that we try to do with some of our interactive experiences is that we do icebreakers. And we have everyone go in because, again, we're in most of the metropolitan cities where a lot of the people really are never from.
Yeah.
Most of them are really from DC or from Philadelphia. So we're like, do icebreakers. And then what they'll do is they'll find someone, they're like, oh my goodness, you're from this part. I grew up here. And it's this connection. And so now you're not away from home by yourself. So like when people make these friendships, and even for myself, like I know it's been times when I know the people or I feel as if people that work in the office make a difference, I will stay somewhere because it's like literally you're thinking to yourself, like, do I want to deal with packing?
Yeah.
Do I want to go through that headache? Not really.
Let me answer that for you. No.
No. I have to renew myself right now. And I'm just like, yeah, not doing that. I'm pushing that off like another 15 months. You know?
Yeah.
But people, you will find that, especially in these metropolitan cities, they might be a little bit different if you're in rural areas and things of that nature. But again, you have to know what is that sell point in your area, because that's what's going to make the big difference. Because it is something that when you're thinking about that age generation, the generation that's underneath me, the ones that are in their 20s and 30s, some of them are going by based off of how they feel in a place, the service that is there, and the overall experience.
Yep.
And it's like knowing all that.
And they're looking at your social, they're looking at your Instagram reels and what you're posting, and they're watching to see what kind of stuff are you doing that, and whether or not it clicks with them or not, it's going to depend on what you're putting out there. So great reminders.
That's why Active 55. Think about the Active 55. There's not a shortage of competition.
Certainly not.
So it's not just because someone has to live there. People are making a decision on where they're going to retire and they live based off of how there's a sense of community and the effort that is put off.
100%. Yep. Our parent company, Heart Legacy, we have a really strong presence with sales mail in the senior living space. And the reason they chose us was because people need to feel connected with, to just get a flat email from a salesperson from a senior living community when, two siblings who live on different sides of the country are trying to make this decision for mom or for dad. And all they're getting is just kind of, automated responses or just flat, no personality. They really felt they wanted something that helped them connect better. And that visual video messaging that we do helps the connection happen. And I think, whether you're a sales mailer or not, look at how you can create these opportunities to connect with those residents. You're a renter, Jesse. I'm a renter. I'm on my third year at the community that I live at. And because of the team in the office executing really good events, I now have a really dear friend that lives in my building. In fact, she lives 4 doors down from me. I go watch her pet rabbit when she's on trips, and she's there for me if I need a ride somewhere because I don't have a car because I'm in the city. But, it really has made a difference, and it's really improved the quality of my living experience in Richmond because I moved to Richmond from Denver, didn't know anybody,
But that's more common than what people don't realize, and that's the data that sometimes they can get lost because we're just thinking like, oh, these are just people that are moving into these buildings. But no, you have a lot of people that are really just moving around because they're either going for new job opportunities or they want to move out of the area, maybe because where they're from doesn't have opportunities. So that's why they're moving to these metropolitan areas. So people are not going into these communities with a circle of influence. And what most people are looking for are the circle of influence. There's some people in my building that we did something that was offsite and we sat and talked for a little bit, but we don't really see each other that much. But when I see him now, he just kind of, hey, how's everything going? Like it helps because then you're like, oh, I know some people in my building. And that really matters. If everyone's so isolated, there's nothing that's going to connect you. And especially for the generation that's underneath, they won't. They
Right.
won't.
Well, and I'm the generation that's over yours because
Okay.
I'm 50. I'm an active adult. I'm 57.
Okay.
So, I mean, it really, I work at home. I'm alone in Richmond.
Mm-hmm.
And if I hadn't had that, like, I really think my living experience would be pretty miserable, in general. And I think when you're working on site and you get into your routine, you sometimes forget, hey, sometimes you're the only friend someone who lives at your community has. You're the only family. I mean, because sometimes you feel like family. There's those folks that hang out in the office and want to play cards with you. I had a woman in Atlanta, Minnie. She would come down to the office and we'd play a hand of canasta. And, sure, it took me away from my work for a little while, but she loved living there. And part of the reason she loved living there was because we took the time. You mentioned all those little details, and who is it, Oprah, that says love is in the details?
Yes.
All those little things matter. So take those donuts out of the damn box.
Please.
You know what I'm saying?
But that's why even for us, we have like Amazon recommended like plates and platters and stuff like that. Just store them well. Like I get that everyone can't spend, and because right now, think about it. If you go out to eat, and I always tell people is like McDonald's right now for a full meal is like $15.
Yep.
So like if you're wanting catering and you're thinking that it's going to be $9, you can't do that at a store.
Reality check.
And that's why I said you should be having conversations with individuals like myself prior to you doing your budget, because then you're coming to me thinking that, I have $1,500, but you're trying to take care of food, drinks, and everything for 100 people. I don't know how to tell you to do that. Even if you're going to Costco, it's like you have to be very present to how much it costs for those little things, or shifting when you're doing it. And because one of the things that can be a backlash is like people say food run out.
Yeah.
But you have to understand like how many people will come. What I had to learn was like a law of averages when it comes to, I don't even know how I figured this out. So usually the units. So like, let's say there's 100 units in a building, and on average, there's at least 2 people in each one. So we have 200 residents that are in a building. So often when I'm working with someone new, I'm like, okay, how many units? What's your occupancy? I'm like, how many people typically? I'm like, okay, this is the amount of people you're saying you're living in this building. Typically, you'll have around 10 to 15% that will come and participate in a well-engaged community.
Yeah.
So if you have a 300 unit building with at least 2 to 3 people and you're trying to have enough for 50 people, that is not mathematically going to work. And I recently was talking to someone, they wanted to do a 4-hour event. And like statistically, what happens is that when you give someone that amount of time, they're not just having one serving. They're having 2, 3 servings because they're just sitting there. They go home, they come back down. And so you're thinking, 4 hours for an event, and we hope to have 75 people. In reality, you probably should have had 150 to 200 servings.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which their budget didn't qualify for. I was like, so this is why I think it's important for when you are working with someone, even if it's not myself, talk to them to tell them what is the plan. Because if I would have known that was the plan, I would have told them like, that's not a good plan.
Right.
You're going to run into an issue.
Yeah. And, it's been really high on my radar and in some of the circles that I, pay attention to. We spend so much money in multifamily on the front end trying to acquire new residents. That is the most expensive thing that you can try to do, regardless of what you think. It is the truth. And we don't spend nearly the time, intention, or money on a retention strategy. We let it kind of happen, and we should be more intentional and strategic about it. So for those of you guys that are listening, and if you're, a manager or a regional manager and you're getting ready to budget for next year, think about, if you're going to give away 2 months rent, why not take some of that concession that you're going to give away and put it towards creating some really amazing bespoke events that fit your community, that will help to create a reputation in the neighborhood that people will want to be a part of versus just giving away rent to get new customers through the door. I mean, I think we need to flip the script. What do you say, Jesse?
Yes, I think having a strategy with that as well. Like that is what's important, because you'll have like vendors that might be like the Comcast, the Sprint, like those types of people, or even it might be a local retail store that will come and do samples. If that's all you're doing, that's not going to connect either. Like they're going to take it and they're going to go back to their apartment. And I think because those of us that have been in the industry prior to the pandemic, we understood that a grab and go in a breakfast situation has its place. However, all of our events should not be grabbing and going, because there's certain things that just have not released a stronghold post pandemic. And I'm just like, let this go. Please stop this. Because when people are just like, success is not everyone taking everything. Like that's what we adapted to because of the pandemic. But we have to kind of start adjusting back to what it was prior, and thinking to ourselves, like, what are our intentions for this specific event? So even if we're going to have a restaurant that's coming in, like, what are we doing to ensure that we have the right quantity? And also that restaurant gets their end benefit, because often when someone comes to me that might find me some kind of way that may do dog walking, or maybe a location's like, you should reach out to Jessie. She works with, like, maybe she can give you some feedback. And they're like, hey, Jessie, I'm getting all these opportunities for free. I was like, no, don't. And I'm going to tell, and I know some people may not like this, because people abuse it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, don't do it for free. I'm like, because what's going to happen is that I have experience. I've seen when people have done this, where all they're doing is checking off a box. And then this vendor has put their money into this because they're hoping for an opportunity. And all you saw it was something to fill in your calendar. And it's not until you pay money that you're actually taking it seriously. And what happens is that's why a lot of businesses aren't doing things for free, because they tried, they were excited, they did a few different communities, and then what happened is that they lost money. And they just won't do it. So it's important when you are working with vendors is that you're not just taking, because if all you're doing is taking, then you're not going to get a lot of opportunities, which will then impact the quality of your events. And then also just your overall reputation inside of your local business community. And people will say, don't do anything with them, because they won't. So understand the value in the local retail. If you are going to give people opportunities, don't just send out a notice tomorrow and say, hey, Becky's dog walking is going to be in the lobby. How is that going to help the dog walking business at all? It just won't. So it just needs to be more well thought through. So a strategy, if you're going to be collaborating with offsite services, retailers, like, think it through. Don't just check off a box.
Right. So where I live, there's a restaurant that's within walking distance. It's called the Southern Railway Tap House. And probably I would say, twice a year or maybe more, we'll do an event. Our community will sponsor an event there at the restaurant, because we can walk to it from the property. What that does is it accomplishes a few things. The restaurant provides great hors d'oeuvres, and they'll give us one drink for free. And if we want more drinks, then it's, you bring your own wallet. But it also introduces everybody who's attending to the restaurant. It's got a really cool space upstairs that's got skee ball and pinball and all kinds of old school arcade games and stuff. And it's a really cool place to hang. So now people are going there as customers. That's the return that people are looking for. If they're going to partner with you, they need to get something out of it in the end.
Because I think that is genius, because even where I reside, there's different restaurants and things like that. And we had one that just did a grand opening a cold walkthrough, and they had us come, and it was marketed as an event, which I don't think the words they used were valid for what it was. I think they were just testing out their kitchen. So we're all sitting outside, and they're walking through, passing outdoors. I'm like, I'd rather you just told me I could have bought. And this is so valuable. I want for people to really understand this. They market it as a happy hour at this restaurant. In reality, it was just them doing samples. At the
Okay.
heart, most of us, some people just left because we're just sitting around. So that can tell me there was a miscommunication with the office and what they was trying to do, because that
Yeah.
disconnect does happen. But ultimately, we were just like, I'd rather them just have me pay.
I mean, I remember back in the day, this was a long time ago too. We used to do pay to participate events. Like when I was
Yes.
working with properties in Chicago, we would hire a coach bus.
Yeah.
And it cost residents like $30.
Yeah.
They rode the bus. They got to, have fun on the bus trip down, because we would do something, during the trip down, but they didn't have to worry about parking. They could drink beer if they wanted to and not have to worry about getting behind the wheel and driving themselves home. And they loved it. So,
I wish they did that more. I wish they did that again, because I get numbers. I get that it's all down to ownership and the profit and loss and us balancing increases from here and there and laboring. Like, I get that wholeheartedly. And in fact, that empathy is why I'm like, okay, let me try to make this make sense with what we're trying to even provide. But ultimately, I understand that some owners just won't give it. But for there to be, I'm trying to do something with $80, you'll find that some residents, depending on your community, I would say just survey them, because I rather me put together a really amazing, because one of the things that we tried out right before the pandemic, and the community itself was kind of nervous about it, but they built out the state of the art tasting kitchen. So it had the full kitchen in the middle, and we had seating that was built into this space, which was amazing. And so we ended up doing a month series where every week we had a private chef that was coming in there, and we were doing a 3-course meal. Wow. And the residents had to pay.
I would be all over that.
Each week, people bought it, because for them, I'm ordering Uber Eats anyway.
Right. Yeah.
I'm spending that for Sodexo processed fried stuff when I can have
that's
I can
awesome.
have a chef cook me a meal in the middle of people paid. And after that, we tried it in some more communities, and it always sold out, because we made sure they got an appetizer, they had a meal, and then a main dish, and then they all got desserts. Yeah. Yes, you may have some people that have this perspective, but if that means that they can get a really great experience compared to someone putting out, little bite-sized things to test at a kitchen, they rather pay. They honestly rather pay for a great experience instead of you trying to kind of piecemeal together an event. And every community I think it's worth it, because like, I would love to be able to do some really great experiences and bringing them to the property, but I know the properties cannot do it in a budget, because there's a disconnect with what things really cost and what they're budgeting. There's this big disconnect on that.
So the themes, I guess, today are, strategic, outside the box, talk to people like you who consult and who can offer them some different perspectives and that psychological profile on what would really resonate with the demographic that lives at a property. Budget for it now, put it in the budget, make sure it's there, so that you're not skimping, because you don't want to diminish that perception of value with your residents in any way. And there is so much value to creating that sense of community, and it is one of the drivers. I'm going to see if I can find the statistic here. Community events is the number one driver in sense of community, followed by social media, the neighbors. And when we're talking neighbors, we're talking the quality of neighbors. They're like me, they're respectful, they pay attention to quiet hours when it's supposed to be quiet, all of those good things. And then, of course, safety and security, which we can't guarantee, but we can, have a safe community for people to live in terms of how we maintain the asset. But all of those things drive that sense of community. And then if you look at perception of value, according to Satisfax, sense of community is the number one driver in perception of value. And so these events really, they're not just events. They are strategy. They need to be budgeted for, just like anything. If you've got CapEx projects, you're budgeting the hell out of everything. If you've got, things that, if you're working on a renovation, you're budgeting for those things and you're spending that money. Well, there needs to be a strategy with regard to resident retention. And this lane that you're driving in, my dear, is one lane that can help to contribute to that in a huge way.
Yeah, because even when I know some management companies that have someone at corporate that's coming up with these ideas, often I can tell that they may not have ever really worked on a site.
Yeah.
And
Or
they're like,
never visited the property.
at all. And they're like, Jesse, we got this directive.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they know that most of you don't have a budget to get this done correctly? Like, it sounds great, but then how does it get executed at the level of quality of the brand of the management company?
Right.
Like, there can be this huge disconnect, and it's not. I don't think it's a dig. It's just that there needs to be some kind of communication on the relativeness of it, because if it's not, it just falls flat.
Yep.
For some people, or it just becomes that everyone's copying and pasting what each other's doing, and it doesn't give the innovativeness that can really exist in the space. Like, one of the ideas that I would love to do one of those candlelit like musical performances in a courtyard. Like, I would love to be able to do that. Like, of course we won't use regular candles because that will set the alarm, but I think that would be so amazing. I had a holiday party where we had someone play a harp, and people came around the corner and was like, oh, there's an actual harpist. So to be able to have a layout where you have like this amazing like performance, I think that would be stellar. I would love to do that.
That's awesome.
They're so amazing, right?
I was just looking at, I got a mailer or an email, and I've never been to one of them, but I've always wanted to go.
I want to do that. I want to do something with live music and art. Like, I want to create an amazing experience, but that's not something you do with $500. So
right. Right. I love that idea. You know, I get those emails. I can't remember who it is that does it. It's like Fever, or they call it, it's got a,
there's different ones, but the main one is like a candlelight project. I think that's the main one that does it.
Yeah. And I bet you money, you know, they're probably looking all the time for venues to do things. And it doesn't always have to be the Museum of Fine Arts. It doesn't always have to be some fancy schmancy mansion. Hey, what about the really cool courtyard that you guys have with your fabulous, you know, pool and water features? Wouldn't that be cool?
Yes.
So I love that idea. I would be, if that happens, you need to let me know and I'll go.
I would be broadcasting it everywhere. Like, that is my goal. I am going to talk at least one community into going YOLO with that. I would love to do that.
I love it. Well, I will connect you with my community manager and y'all can talk. No, but seriously, folks, we will make sure that you know how to get a hold of Jesse. We'll have links to her website and her contact information in the show notes. This has been a lot of fun, and I know that our audience has gotten all kinds of great ideas from you. Hopefully, you know, this will be a good opportunity for you to make some new connections, Jesse. We sure do appreciate you spending time with us today. This has been Steve Wunsch and Jese Gary on the Multifamily Mind. Super powered by Sales Mail, the easiest way to send personalized video via email, text, and CRM. And we will see you next time. Cheers, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Multifamily Mind podcast, brought to you by Sales Mail, the easiest way to send personalized video via email, text, and CRM. To learn more, go to salesmail.com. And remember, always be audacious. Until next time, I'm Steve Wunsch. Have a great week.